He heard the blades, a helicopter floating over his house. 3 men in combat gear, homeowner association printed on their uniforms, descended onto his roof. One raised a metal bar toward the skylight. He flipped the switch labeled defense mode, and what happened next? They never saw it coming. It all started with a letter. It arrived in my mailbox on a bright Tuesday morning, tucked between an Amazon package and a pizza coupon flyer. A cream-colored envelope with the Homeowner Association's logo, a tasteless combination of a tree and a picket fence stamped at the top. I almost threw it away without opening it. The last 5 letters they'd sent were the same thing. Silly fines for community violations that weren't even real. But this time something felt different. Notice of violation was printed in bright red letters across the top. Dear Mr. Lawson, this is to inform you that you are in violation of Homeowner Association Regulation for 12B aesthetic uniformity. Your front door has been painted an unapproved shade of red as per Homeowner Association guidelines. Acceptable colors are eggshell white, beige, and light gray. Failure to comply within 48 hours will result in increased penalties. I sighed and squeezed the letter. Typical Homeowner Association. The door had been red for 6 months. Why were they suddenly caring now? But the truth was, this was only the latest chapter in a long, angry war between me and the Homeowner Association. It started when I moved into the neighborhood 2 years ago. At first, everything seemed perfect. Clean streets, well-maintained houses, friendly neighbors. But then, the letters started coming. First, it was about the trash can. Apparently I'd left it out an hour too long after pickup. Then it was the lawn too long by an inch. Then the mailbox, not compliant with community standards. The fines started piling up. Hundreds of dollars in penalties for things that didn't matter. I tried appealing, but the Homeowner Association board, a collection of middle-aged, nosy bodies who took their positions far too seriously, refused to budge. The head of the Homeowner Association, Parker, was the worst of them all. His smile was phony, his handshake too firm, and he had a way of tilting his head while he listened. That made it clear he wasn't listening at all. I knew why Parker hated me. I was the outsider, a single guy who didn't care about neighborhood barbecues or community unity. I worked from home, kept to myself, and did not bother trying to make friends with people I had nothing in common with. That angered Parker off. He liked control. He liked the feeling of knowing that everyone in the neighborhood followed his rules. And I was the one person who did not. So when I painted my door red, my own quiet act of defiance, Parker must have seen it as a personal insult. And now, he was trying to make me pay for it. I was still standing at the kitchen counter, the wrinkled letter in my hand when I heard it. A low, mechanical thump, thump, thump in the distance. At first, I thought it was construction, but the sound grew louder, more clear. The windows rattled. Coffee spilled over the rim of my mug. I stepped toward the window and pulled the blinds open. A helicopter was dropping over my house. My stomach dropped. It was matte black with no markings. Not police, not military. A rope dropped from the open side, and I watched in shocked disbelief as 3 men in tactical gear descended down onto my roof. My phone buzzed a text from Joe, my neighbor. Dude, why is there a helicopter over your house? I stepped back from the window as the men landed on the roof. They were dressed in black body armor, utility belts, tactical boots, and across their backs were 3 white letters. Homeowner Association. What the hell? I whispered. One of them pulled out a crowbar and approached the skylight. My heart slammed in my chest. No, 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 no. Another man pulled a tool from his belt. Some kind of electric saw and crouched next to the skylight. Sparks flew as the glass began to crack. I stumbled back toward the wall, my hand shaking as I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. What is your emergency? There are men on my roof, I shouted. They are trying to break in. Sir, can you confirm the location? Yes, my address is. We're showing a record of approved homeowner association activity at your property. What? No. They are breaking in. They are trying to. Sir, this is a homeowner association. Enforcement matter. You'll need to contact your homeowner association representative directly. Local authorities are not authorized to intervene. What the hell does that mean? Have a nice day. Click. I stared at the phone in disbelief. My pulse was pounding in my ears. The glass above me shattered. A boot smashed through the skylight, sending shards raining onto the floor. I stumbled backward as one of the men lowered himself down on a rope. He landed with a heavy thud, his gloved hand reaching for his hip and the pistol strapped there. "Mr. Lawson," he said. His voice was quiet, almost bored. "You have been warned about the door." I took a step back. "You're out of your mind. Failure to comply has consequences," he said, raising the pistol. My back hit the wall. My eyes darted toward the console near the door, the one I had installed months ago when the homeowner association first started escalating. My hand shot toward it. The man's finger tightened on the trigger. I slammed my hand on the button labeled defense mode. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the house came alive. A low mechanical hum filled the room as red targeting lights blinked on across the ceiling and walls. Outside, the guns in the yard extended from their housings, mechanical whirring cutting through the quiet. The man's eyes widened, his hand hovered near his pistol. "Stand down," I shouted. For a second, neither of us moved. The turret system hummed louder, the red lights glowing brighter. The man's eyes narrowed, his hand twitched toward his weapon. "Target acquired," the AI voice announced. And that's where things started to go out of control. Parker's men charged the skylight. It happened fast, faster than I expected. One of them swung the crowbar down, smashing the already broken glass. Shards rained down, spreading across the floor with a sharp, glass-like crash. My heart slammed in my chest as the first man pulled himself through the opening, landing on the floor in a low crouch. His gloved hand shot to his hip, where a black pistol was strapped. My instincts reacted. "Engage," I shouted. The turret's targeting system hummed to life. The red laser dot settled on his chest. His eyes widened as he realized what was happening, and then the turret fired. Thumb! The rubber round shot through the room with strong force, striking the man square in the chest. He let out a strangled gasp as the impact knocked him off his feet. He flew backward, slammed into the wall, and slid down to the floor with a moan. "Jesus!" someone shouted. "Hold your ground," Parker barked from the roof. His voice was sharp, cold, and angry. The second man hesitated at the edge of the skylight. He looked down at his fallen teammate, uncertainty flashing in his eyes. Then he gritted his teeth, pulled a taser from his belt, and jumped down. He rolled as he landed, raised the taser. The turret swept left and locked on. "Target acquired." The AI announced fire. I said thump. The round hit the man's thigh with a nasty crack. He screamed and dropped the taser, clutching his leg as he crumpled to the floor. From above, Parker's face twisted in rage. "You little..." The third man was already running for the edge of the roof. He was halfway through clipping himself into the rope when the second turret activated on the south corner of the roof. The red laser dot tracked him as he scrambled toward the helicopter. "Don't even think about it," I growled. The turret fired. The rubber round struck the man's back just as his boot left the edge of the roof. He screamed as the impact sent him spinning. His harness caught the fall, and he dangled beneath the helicopter, twisting helplessly in the air. Parker stepped toward the edge of the skylight, his gloved hands curled into fists. "Enough," he shouted. I hit the speaker button. "Enough. You're the one who brought a SWAT team to my house. You think you have one?" Parker shouted. "This does not end here. The mistake I said was thinking you could pull this and get away with it." Parker's hand shot toward his belt. I saw the flash of metal, a shiny black taser as he raised it toward the turret. "Target locked," the AI announced. "Do not," I said. Parker froze. The red laser dot hovered just above his heart. "You are bluffing," he snarled. "Try me." For a long, stressful moment, neither of us moved. Parker's jaw tightened. As he considered his options, his men were down, the helicopter was still circling overhead, and the turrets were tracking his every movement. "Stand down," he ordered through clenched teeth. The AI's voice echoed through the room. Threat assessment reduced. Parker's eyes narrowed. You are going to regret this. Yeah, I said. Let us see how the courts feel about you breaking and entering. Parker's mouth curled. You think this will hold up in court? Oh, I do not care about the courts, I said, smiling. But you should probably care about the live broadcast. Parker's face drained. I gestured toward the corner of the room where a small camera was flashing red. Streaming to YouTube 10,000 viewers and climbing. His face tightened with fury. You are on private property. I cut him off. Armed with a gun and tactical gear and a helicopter. I smiled. I would say that looks pretty bad. Parker's hands shook. He was losing control. For someone like him. Someone who depended on order, on structure, on dominance. This was his nightmare. I will bury you for this, he said, his voice low and threatening. That is funny, I replied, because it looks like you were the one who is about to get buried. Parker's gaze flicked toward the ceiling, where the camera light blinked steadily. He knew he was cornered. There was no getting out of this cleanly. Parker's mouth twitched. His eyes narrowed. Slowly, he lowered the taser to his side. Pull back, he said. What? One of his men barked. Pull back, Parker yelled. The helicopter's engine roared overhead as the rope line dropped down. One of the wounded men scrambled toward the edge of the roof and clipped himself into the harness. The man dangling below was pulled upward, his face twisted in pain. Parker's eyes locked with mine one last time. This is not over, he snarled. I smiled. No, but it is a good start. Parker's gaze stayed for a long, dangerous moment. Then he grabbed the rope, clipped himself in, and was pulled toward the helicopter. I stood there, breathing hard as the helicopter lifted away. The sound of the rotors faded into the night sky. The turret lights dimmed. The AI's voice echoed one last time. Threat neutralized. I exhaled slowly. My hands were still shaking. My phone buzzed. A text from Joe. Holy. Another from Mary. Is that a helicopter? I smiled faintly as I typed back. Yeah. You should have seen their faces. I leaned back against the wall. My heart still pounding in my chest. Parker would be back. That much was certain. He would recover his wounds, regroup, and try again. But next time, I would be ready. The helicopter hovered for a few seconds longer, the sound of its blades cutting through the night. Then it banked left and disappeared over the horizon, shrinking into the distance until it was nothing more than a dark blur against the sky. I stood there for a long moment, listening to the silence settle over the house. My chest rose and fell with each heavy breath. The turret lights faded one by one as the system powered down. A low mechanical hum echoed through the walls before everything fell still. Then I heard a knock on the front door. Joe's voice floated through the door. Dude, are you alive? I took a deep breath and opened the door. Joe stood there barefoot, wearing sleep pants and a hoodie. His hair was a mess and his face was still frozen in wide-eyed shock. Did you seriously just take down a bunch of homeowner association guys with turrets? Yeah, I said. My voice was still hoarse from the adrenaline. Joe's mouth curved into a stunned smile. Holy. He stepped inside, glancing toward the wreckage near the skylight. The broken glass, the burn marks from the turret rounds, the faint smell of burnt rubber hanging in the air. Jesus, he muttered. They really went for it. Yeah, I said, running a hand through my hair. My fingers were still shaking. Joe whistled low. And you streamed it? I grabbed my phone from the counter and opened YouTube. The video was still live. 48621 viewers, comments 13. 7,000 Is this real? This guy's a legend. Homeowner Association has officially lost their minds. That's it. I'm building turrets. I smiled. Joe looked over my shoulder at the screen. You know they're going to come after you for this, right? I know, I said. Joe shook his head. Dude, what's the plan? Before I could answer, a black SUV rolled to a stop at the end of the driveway. The engine ran for a moment before the door swung open. A man in a dark suit stepped out. He was tall and thin, with short gray hair slicked back and a face so carefully blank it could have been carved from stone. He adjusted his sleeves as he approached the house, a clipboard tucked under his arm. Joe glanced at me. Lawyer? Homeowner Association? Legal counsel. I said. The man climbed the steps and stopped at the threshold. He looked down at me with the calm, detached expression of a surgeon about to make the first incision. "Mr. Lawson," he said, his voice low and measured, "you will be hearing from our lawyers." I smiled. "Good. Tell them to call my lawyer too." His mouth pressed. "The homeowner association does not take kindly to violence." "Oh, you mean the violence that started when your goons broke into my house?" His expression didn't change. "You escalated the situation." "I defended my property," I corrected. The man's eyes tightened slightly. "Mr. Parker has already filed a formal complaint against you. The board will meet to discuss potential legal action." "Great," I said. "Make sure you bring the footage to the meeting." All 48,000 people watching the live stream saw how that went. The man's jaw moved. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. "No," I said. "The mistake was thinking you could keep getting away with this." Joe laughed beside me. "Oh," I added, "and let Parker know his medical bills are on you guys." The man's face darkened, his lips pressed into a hard line. Then he turned and walked back toward the SUV. The tires squeaked slightly as the vehicle pulled away from the curb and disappeared down the street. Joe let out a low whistle. "Wow, I think you actually shocked them." "I think I annoyed them," I said. Joe grinned. "Yeah, even better." I stepped back inside, shutting the door. Behind me, Joe followed, leaning casually against the wall. "So what now?" he asked. I picked up my phone and refreshed the video. 51,000 viewers. "Well," I said, "I think it's time for a beer." Joe laughed. "You earned it, man." I grabbed 2 beers from the fridge and threw one to him. Joe popped the cap and leaned against the counter. As I sank into the couch, my muscles were still stiff from the adrenaline. For a few minutes we sat in silence. The tension slowly faded out of the room. The house was quiet except for the occasional chime of a new comment scrolling across the screen. Finally, Joe broke the silence. "You know they'll come back, right?" "Yeah," I said, "but next time I tap the screen, closing the YouTube app, the system will be ready." That night, I slept better than I had in months. But somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew this was not over. The homeowner association did not lose gracefully. Parker did not lose gracefully. He would be back. He would find another way to come after me. Through legal channels, through new rules, or maybe just outright revenge. But that was fine, because now I had the power. The footage was out there. The internet had seen what they tried to do, and whose side they were really on. Next time Parker tried to pull something, I would be waiting. And the system, it would be online.